Welcome back to Sim Sunday. I am the Sunday Pilot, and this is the final episode in my ultra long haul series, where we're looking at ultra long haul flights in the real world and seeing if they're possible to complete in flight sim. Today we're at Dubai International. We're in the Emirates PMDG 777-300ER, and we're going to fly 15 hours and 40 minutes across to San Francisco in the United States. Getting straight into sim brief, this is going to be an interesting flight because we're going over the North Pole. And just like I did 2 videos back, I've set the clock back to the 1st of September 2019 and even set the active sky weather to deliver the historic weather on that very day. So we're going to be departing on runway 12 right with a left-hand turn shortly after departure, turning left again, heading in a northeasterly direction towards Iran. Overhead the Caspian Sea, heading towards Russian airspace, which we will be departing over northern Siberia, heading for the North Pole. And of course we will be making landfall in North America overhead Arctic Canada. At the time of recording this flight back in December 2020, Emirates weren't flying this route, but looking at their timetable they had planned to restart it in the spring of 21. It was a daytime flight leaving around 9:10 a.m. local time in Dubai and arriving mid-afternoon in San Francisco. So with the clock set back to the 1st of September 2019, this was going to be a daytime flight.
Emirates 225 Heavy is clear to San Francisco. Your report as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain altitude 7,000. Departure frequency is 124.45, Squawk 5115.
We had taken on board 145.5 metric tons of fuel, so we were going to be very heavy on departure, and that's why V2 was calculated at 174 knots. Right, I'm going to order pushback and get underway to runway 12 right here at Dubai, but please remember folks, I'm using the FlyTampa Dubai rebooted scenery, so it's not GSX compatible.
Departure check completed. Bypass bin inserted. Release parking brakes. Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will. Unlocking gear.
Emirates 729er tag. Emirates 225 Heavy taxi holding point for runway 12 right. Via taxiway 003 kilo 2. Contact tower on 118.751 ready.
As we taxi towards runway 12 right, it is probably time to tell you that this was one of those virtual flights and simulator that didn't go well. Even now, looking at the FMC, it was telling me there simply wasn't enough fuel to make this flight, which I didn't believe. To be clear, it does get worse, so I will come back and explain the various issues as we get into this flight. In the meantime, let's get out to runway 12 right and get airborne en route to San Francisco.
Emirates 225 Heavy cleared for takeoff. Runway 12 right. Service wind 188.6. Cleared to land. Runway 12.
On runway 12 right.
Mahara 61. 1000. Emirates 225 Heavy. Warts-and-all. Turn right heading 245. Turn right.
As we depart Dubai, heading for the Gulf of Arabia, which we'll be crossing shortly en route towards Iran, it's time to talk about a few of the issues that dogged this flight. The first issue is the fact that the FMC is saying that there is simply not enough fuel. This is something I've found is quite common in PMDG, and therefore I don't believe what the FMC is telling me. The second issue is the CAS, the crew alert system, is telling me that I had a tail strike on departure. I certainly didn't notice it, but on an aircraft as long as the 777-300ER, I guess this can happen. I'm also going to make the assumption that the standard operating procedure for this particular warning is to return to the airport. But of course, being a Sunday pilot and doing this particular virtual flight in Flight Sim, I chose to ignore it and carry on towards San Francisco. I actually don't think that I've ever flown over the Caspian Sea in Flight Sim. As you can see, the 1st of September 2019 was a very clear day, and we travelled the whole length of the Caspian Sea from Iran in the south to Kazakhstan in the north, talking to Baku ATC in Azerbaijan for most of the journey. As we left the Russian coast or the Siberian coast to the Barents Sea, heading towards the North Pole, you can see the Siberian coastline just beneath the clouds. As you can see, there really isn't a lot to see in prepared 3D version 4.5 when over the North Pole. It is simply a whiteout. I have flown over the North Pole more than a few times in real life, and let me tell you, it is a lot more dramatic for real. But here in Flight Sim, as we reached the halfway point, my fuel was still the biggest worry. The FMC was still warning of insufficient fuel, but my experience told me we'd more than enough. We were still only at 34,000 feet, and we wouldn't be climbing until well over northern Canada. Despite the internal battle going on inside my head in respect to the fuel situation and if I actually had enough to make it to San Francisco, I continued on over northern Canada. For this particular flight in prepared 3D version 4.5, the arrival into San Francisco was where this particular journey went absolutely awry. The bottom line was that the simulator crashed on multiple occasions. I think I counted 14 in total, and I will show you 3 of the failed attempts at the end of this video once I've actually completed this flight, which took place more than 2 days after I started this journey in Flight Sim from Dubai to San Francisco. The problem in the end was Cloudberry, Oakland International, an add-on piece of scenery that I've had for at least a year now. For whatever reason, that scenery was killing my PC's performance. You'll see a little later the problems it caused. In the meantime, let's complete this flight, which started off with an approach into runway 28 left, only to be sent to 28 right, or did I mishear the ATC instructions? Anyway, you'll see in a few minutes how I coped with a last minute runway change.
400. 300. 200. 100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Well, despite the difficulties in this particular journey from Dubai to San Francisco, we made it to SFO. I still think I probably should have given up on this flight back in Dubai before it even started. Anyway, we got here in the end, and in a few minutes I will show you the failed attempts to land here at San Francisco before uninstalling Cloudberry Oakland International. But as we taxi towards the international terminal here at San Francisco, it is time to bring this episode of Sim Sunday to a close. And this also brings to an end this ultra long haul series, where I think the real Airbus pilot and myself have proven that you can fly ultra long haul flights in Flight Simulator. And of course, even here in the PMDG, when the FMC was warning me I was going to run out of fuel, I landed with just under 20 metric tons of fuel to spare. So here at Flightbeam's San Francisco HD, it's time to bid you farewell. Thanks for watching.
I'm approaching minimums. Minimums.
Long landing.
50,
Long
40,
landing.
30, 20, 10. terrain. Too low 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 terrain. Minimums. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. 30, 20, 10.